They say that even bad press is good press. But what if the press doesn't focus on the movie, but on everything behind the camera, and some of the actors don't even do the press tours, causing even more bad press? Still good? Well, maybe not. But we're here to prove to you that Don't Worry Darling is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. And we've got an interesting one here because this is a film that I'm not going to lie, I was surprised when the 2023 Razzie nominations came out that this film did not receive a single nomination. And I think that's probably mostly because of a lot of the press surrounding the film. That's because we are talking about Don't Worry Darling. And here to join us on this episode is my darling wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing today?
I see what you did there.
Right?
Don't worry, darling.
Don't worry, darling. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this movie.
Well, if it's anything like the movie in real life, I am a little slightly concerned. Yes, actually.
So now before we get into this, I'm going to ask you because we had talked about it and put this movie on our radar, and then we watched it. Should I be apologizing to you for putting this on your radar?
No, you know what? I actually really enjoyed it. I don't think that I had enough of anything to follow it. There were times where I got lost, but aside from that, and I do have questions, but we'll get there, I actually really, really liked this movie. I wanted to watch it a third time.
I feel like the Geek Squad right now. You got questions, we got answers, but that's okay.
I'm going to need a whole lot of answers here.
Well, here's hoping that we have the answers that you're looking for, or at least are able to shed a little bit of light on things. But before we go down this road, before we tackle Don't Worry Darling, it's time to take this film and trailerize it.
In a post-pandemic world, where people spend years watching the news and asking aloud, what the hell is going on here? Olivia Wilde presents a movie where you will stare at your screen and ask aloud, what the hell is going on here? Florence Pugh stars in Don't Worry Darling, a title that sounds less like a plot description and more like something she was probably told a million times on set. She plays Alice, a happy homemaker in the 50s. Or is she? She's married to Jack, a hard-working company man trying to make an ideal life for his wife. Or is he? Together, they live in Victory, California, a self-contained company-owned community where people live an idyllic lifestyle. Or do they? Look, we could go on like this for days. Just smoke something or pop an edible and start drawing doodles until they make sense for 2 hours. The infinite monkey's rule states that eventually you'll figure it out. Don't worry, darling. Rated R. For roadmap needed to make sense of everything.
It's funny because it's true. Especially the edible part, because, yeah, there were times where I was like, wow, I am just not in the right mindset for this.
Now, I'll be honest, but before we get into who's all in this and whatnot, there was an era where movies would come out and you sat there and you stared at it, and afterwards you're like, what the did I just watch? Then you go back and watch it again, and you were more enthralled with the je ne sais quoi of the film as opposed to things being cookie cuttered out. This felt like one of those films.
Absolutely. And hence it deserved a third watch.
And fourth and fifth, because you're still trying to figure it all out. But let's get into who's in this film. The film stars Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Olivia Wilde, Chris Pine, Gemma Chan, Kiki Lane, and others. However, there is an almost starring in this one. And I'm going to go with the tame ones first here, because there's one where there's a hashtag involved, and it ain't pretty. But let's get into the tame ones here. In the role of Margaret, as played by Kiki Layne, the girl that completely loses her mind and looks like she kills herself, that was supposed to be played by Dakota Johnson, but she had to step out due to scheduling conflicts, and Kiki Layne stepped in and take that role. Also, in the role that Florence Pugh played as Alice, it was originally supposed to be Olivia Wilde, the director, but then she saw Midsommar and cast Florence Pugh into the film, and then giving herself the role of Bunny as a bit more of a side character. Now, this is where it gets messy. Apparently, in the role of Jack, as played by Harry Styles, it was supposed to be Shia LaBeouf. But here's the thing. So apparently Olivia Wilde wanted Harry Styles right off the bat to be in the role, but then he's like, no, I can't do it. I got all these touring commitments. And then she cast Shia LaBeouf, and then the touring commitments got put on, stop because of the pandemic. And then, there was this whole thing where, she said that Shia LaBeouf was fired. He said he was never fired, and then he walked away from the production. There was apparently a video that was put out with a hashtag Time's Up Olivia, where she's like begging Shia LaBeouf to stay on the project. Like, it got messy, and it's messier that Olivia Wilde was actually in a relationship with Harry Styles at the time. Shortly after, or somewhat during, it's still not quite sure, her breakup with Jason Sudeikis, who was her husband at the time. So much so that Olivia Wilde was served the divorce papers from Jason Sudeikis while she was presenting an award on stage.
Fascinating.
Like, when I say there's a ton of bad press about this film and it has nothing to do with the actual film itself, like, this is Young and the Restless level drama that was going on. And then, of course, Florence Pugh didn't want to do any press for the film because she felt that A, she felt disrespected, and B, she felt like all the attention was being put on the sexuality of Alice and Florence Pugh having sex scenes in this film. Like it got messy.
I can see that. So much to unpack there. First of all, I had no idea that Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles were in a relationship during the filming?
Yeah, so apparently, and again, we're not experts. We're not Hollywood insiders. We are Canadian idiots in a basement with a microphone. So take everything that we say with a Wikipedia-sized grain of salt here. But so Olivia Wilde was married to Jason Sudeikis. That marriage dissolved, and around the same time, Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles started a relationship while they were on set
filming this movie.
And it was around, shortly after the film was done being filmed that the divorce papers were served by the guy who serves the papers while she's on stage handing an award. Now, Jason Sudeikis, to his credit, has said he had nothing to do with the timing of the serving of the papers, and that if he had any inclination that he would have said, no, that's not cool. But it's messy. And right now, 2 years after that relationship started, Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles are apparently no longer together.
Yeah. I totally disagree with being served papers. Like, I mean, she was working. She was in the public eye at that time. That's about as low class as the Will Smith slap down.
But the thing is,
right?
it happened around the same time, and it brought up the conversation again about, people being able to just walk up on stage while a star is on there and doing their job in a very, for lack of a better term, in a vulnerable position. They can't really clap back at the time, or at least, fend for themselves. They're on camera in front of an audience. What are they going to do?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's not cool.
Not cool.
It's
low
not
class.
Cool. The film, of course, was directed by Olivia Wilde. It's from a script that was on the 2019 blacklist, and this was shortly after she directed the film Booksmart, which was very well received by critics. Now, There are a lot of awards and nominations for this film, so let's get through the good first. It was nominated for Outstanding Original Score for a Studio Film at the SCL Awards. It lost to the movie Nope. Production designer Katie Byron and costume designer Ariane Phelps were nominated for multiple awards, so kudos to them. At the MTV Movie and TV Awards, Florence Pugh was nominated for Best Performance in a Film. She lost to Tom Cruise for Top Gun Maverick. And Harry Styles was nominated for Best Villain at those awards. He lost to the Scarlet Witch herself, Elizabeth Olsen, for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. At the Venice Film Festival, the Fan Heart 3 Award, this movie won the Graffetta d'Oro for Best Film. At the People's Choice Awards, Harry Styles and Florence Pugh were both nominated for Drama Movie Star. They lost to Austin Butler for Elvis, but the movie was the winner of the Drama Movie of 2022 at those awards. At the Women Film Critics Circle Awards, Olivia Wilde won the Courage in Filmmaking Award. The movie was also nominated for Best Movie by a Woman. It lost to Sarah Polley for Women Talking. And the movie was nominated for the Adrian Shelley Award. Again, it lost to Women Talking. However, at the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle Awards, this film won the Most Disappointing Film Award, beating out only one other film. That movie was Babylon. So a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. I fully agree with the costume designers and the production designers. They did a phenomenal job in making this film and the 50s setting of the film work really well. Completely agree with that. However, at the box office, now, I'm going to put the asterisks on this one here because, of course, it came out in 2022, and this is when people are just starting to get back to the theater. So, of course, films are not necessarily doing as good as they used to do back in the day. However, on a $20 million budget, according to IMDb, this film made a worldwide gross of $87.6 million. When it debuted on the September 23rd, 2022 weekend, it debuted at number 1 with a total of just over $19 million. It beat out The Woman King, which was in its second week. There were no other debuts except for the re-release of Avatar, which it itself made $10.5 million, good enough for third place. But the reason why we are here, the critic score. Over at Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 48, and over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 78%, but the tomatometer is 38%. So you are literally looking at a 40, math is hard, a 40-point swing as far as the critics to the audience. Where is this film for you before we get into the breakdown of it?
You know what? I agree with the audience. I think the critics missed the mark on this one.
I don't know if I'd go as far as 78%, but there's definitely a lot. It's nowhere near a 38%. And of course, that's why we're here, because the film is not that bad. But let's get into the breakdown here.
I do have a question. Would you have it top 50?
I think I would put it around maybe a 68. I have maybe even 70. I do have some questions and some plot holes.
I have many questions.
Right. But I do think there is a lot to be said for this film. So let's get to this here. Let's start with Florence Pugh herself playing Alice. How was she for you?
Oh my God, she was fantastic. She was so great. I absolutely loved, she was incredibly believable. The flashback scenes, or I don't even know if I want to call them flashback scenes, or the scenes where she became very aware that she was not living in the really real world.
For the record, by the way, and we should put this out there right now, we're going to spoil this like a mofo, and I know it's not that old a film. However, it's out there for you to watch. If you're in Canada, you can right now watch it on Crave. I'm not sure where you can watch it in the States. Go find a copy of this film or find a streaming service that has this film and definitely watch it, because there's some definitely interesting points in this film. I completely agree with you. Florence Pugh killed it in this film. I'm so happy it wasn't Olivia Wilde in that role, because Olivia Wilde plays a very strong character in Bunny, especially when you realize her motivations for being there. I think Florence Pugh brings a perfect element of vulnerability to Alice as her world is starting to collapse around her.
Absolutely. There was a certain strength to her, and even when she was trying to act normal in the social settings, there was always kind of like that underlying, I don't know if I want to call it sarcasm, but there was kind of like, almost like she knew when to flip the switch. She knew like, but even though, she would be pretending to live this extravagantly pampered, privileged life, and yet she just knew it wasn't quite right, that something wasn't quite right.
Yeah, and she and Jack feel like that young, almost newlywed married couple, still without kids, and still, let's be honest, still having that honeymoon sex all over the place, right? But it almost feels like she's playing dress up in this community, because everyone is in this prim, proper Pleasantville style 50s attire, living in the middle of the desert that's going on. She feels like someone who, appreciates where they are, appreciates the life that Jack is trying to build for her. And she's doing her best to fit in. And then, of course, when things start to unravel at the seams, it's almost like, well, why am I trying to fit into this idealistic lifestyle, quote unquote, when clearly the edges are frayed?
I almost want to parallel it to WandaVision, where
a lot like that, yeah.
Where she's very self-aware that something's not quite right. I mean, in WandaVision, it's a world that she created. This one, maybe not so much, but she is very much aware that something is not quite adding up.
I love
dun, dun, dun.
I love the fact that you mentioned WandaVision, because it's almost like there's a role reversal here.
Yes.
So Jack has kind of created the world for her to live in, and she's not exactly sure if the world is real. Whereas it's very much gender swapped in WandaVision.
It was kind of like when Vision
started to question everything.
To realize,
Exactly. And started to really ask the questions and tear apart the fakeness of the world that they're living in at the time, trying to figure out what is real and what isn't.
And then you really start to question the not so key players. Like in this particular case, her group of friends, the boss of the company, basically the creator, or how would you exactly say his role? Because he's not the creator.
No, he's not the creator, but he's very... Okay, so let me try and draw some parallels here. Now, Olivia Wilde came out and said that when she was making this film, she was drawing from two specific movies for lack of a better term, inspiration: Inception and The Truman Show. The Truman Show is, I think, a very apt thing, because in that movie, Jim Carrey's Truman is the only person who doesn't realize that the world around him is fake. Everyone else is playing roles, and he sees he starts to get this inclination that the world around him isn't necessarily what it's supposed to be. There are other movies out there that made me draw other parallels to. I think WandaVision is a perfect parallel for this. The other movie that came to mind for me was Surrogates, starring Bruce Willis. A phenomenal freaking film. And I know, unfortunately, that film qualifies, but on the upside, that film qualifies, and I'm looking forward to going down that road here. But the thing with surrogates is that people would hook themselves up into this contraption, and their consciousness is downloaded into a surrogate body, so they can go out and live whatever life they want. They can do whatever the hell they want, and it doesn't matter because they're still at home lying in this bed with this contraption all hooked up to them. So whatever happens out there, it ain't real. It's only happening to their surrogate. Here, and this is where the spoilers start, okay? Because the world that they're in is this Victory, California, in the desert kind of city. It's more like Westworld. And, you know, as far as Chris Pine's character, he's more like the guy who made Westworld. He's more of that, the guy who basically does the voice of the Watcher in What If. That guy whose name, unfortunately, I cannot remember right now. So apologies. I am a sieve. But if you compare this movie to Westworld and Surrogates as kind of a combination of the two, and yes, with a little bit of Truman Show, maybe even a little bit of Inception thrown in, they're pulling from a lot of very, really good sources for inspiration. I don't even know if Surrogates was even on their radar, but I think Westworld might have been. Even
some Pleasantville, like just watching it, it was very much like this takes place in Pleasantville. Right.
Well, I mean, Pleasantville, of course, was, they were sucked into this black and white TV show. Again, very WandaVision, right? And the things that they do in that quote unquote show actually affects the world around them. And that's why the color starts to pop throughout the movie in Pleasantville. The more the color pops, the more the television series reality of their experience is falling apart. Here, very much. So let me try and explain as best I can what the is going on in this film here. So the majority of the first part of the film is, they're in this desert town called Victory. They're working for the Victory Company. All the while, Florence Pugh is having these like weird flashes and visions and stuff like that. And it turns out that where they are in Victory is not really real. What it is Jack in reality and Alice are together in reality. She's a nurse. She's working like 30-hour days, sleeping for like 3 hours, then going back and working more. But for some reason, she likes that. But Jack feels left out. Jack feels like he's not contributing anything. And all he wants is, he wants his wife. He wants to be able to contribute. He wants to feel like, and this is going to sound really sexist here, so just understand that I'm talking about a fictional character here. He wants to be quote unquote the man, and whatever that means. He wants to be the one in charge. He wants that 50s era lifestyle. So he basically signs her up, without her knowing, to be part of the Victory Project, which is basically these neurosensors that are attached to her eyes, and she's like comatose in bed while her mind is in this 50s world, and he's there with her, like they're connected kind of thing. But the movie itself feels more like a story of male control over women and the fallibility of that.
I see it differently.
I'd love to hear your take on this.
I see it that, okay, so yes, I agree with your viewpoint, but it's also the turnaround, and it's the innate woman's instinct or the intuition that something is not quite right. Mm-hmm. And I found that Alice was extremely a strong female character. Mm-hmm. Like she was strong enough that she would go up against the boss of the Victory Company. She found herself going to the headquarters where you're not supposed to go. You were not supposed to go. And she was, she had no hesitation to start to question things and start to call it out in front of, everyone really at a dinner party at her place. So yes and no. I was kind of confused because I wasn't sure if she actually was hating her reality and this was like a gift that Jack tried to give to her, that in this world of Victory, in this, created sense, she didn't have to work and she could, go and spend her day by the poolside or doing ballet, which now that we're talking about ballet, I just have to say how incredibly brilliant it was that many of her flashbacks or her almost like she would have moments of panic. And they would be beautifully choreographed ballet routines. And I think it's so poignant that, was it not the ballet instructor was also the wife of, and I'm so sorry, I forget his name, but the boss of
Chris Pine, yes.
Chris Pine's character.
Captain frickin' Kirk, okay?
So I knew that I recognized him. I just, what was his character name though?
Oh, that was Frank.
Frank.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's call him Frank. But yeah, so Frank's wife was the ballet instructor.
But the whole thing about the Victory Corporation, quote unquote, at least in the real world, and then versus the Victory 50s world, is that the idea is that this company is, for lack of a better term, empowering men to take their wives back, kind of thing. So all the women in the film are like, this is the life that they're being created to lead by being hooked up to these sensors, these neural sensors. And when the men leave for the day, they have the ability to kind of go in and out, where the women, that most of them haven't even signed up for this willingly. Some did, but
I think the most horrific part was the neighbor.
Oh, Bunny,
who lost her child.
Yeah, that's Bunny. It's played by Olivia Wilde.
And then started to go, quote unquote, everyone thought she was going crazy. But you know what? I think much like Alice's character, she saw it for what it was.
Well, the thing is,
and they tried to.
Yeah, the thing is, Bunny went in there of her own accord, because by being in that world, she lost her husband, she lost her kids. So the only way for her to be with her kids is to be in Victory. So she's living this fake life because she can't bear the thought of being in a reality without her children.
I think actually we're talking about a different character. I'm talking about the woman who was walking around with the plane. Not Bunny.
Okay, no. That was Margaret, as played by Kiki Lane, and the one who eventually slit her throat and fell off the roof. Yeah, so.
But again, with that said, there were those gentlemen in the red jumpsuits
Mm-hmm.
that the minute that the women started to question their quote unquote reality or their place
Mm-hmm.
here in Victory, California, it was almost like, let's find a way to silence them. And they had a crew for that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in this where you have to sit there and you almost have to really try to figure out, well, how does this work? And once you realize that Victory is a fictional, virtual Westworld style world that they're living in, are the people in red parts of the program? And this is their visualizing way of getting people out of the neural link so that it makes sense for the rest of the people in the virtual world. You have to think that these people are hooked up to a server, and this, like, everyone in this town is connected to the same server. So how does a computer generate a way for the disappearance of someone being taken off the link? How does that make sense to everyone else without really breaking the reality of it for them?
Well, they kind of did that at the end, though, with Alice coming back after she had disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? And, as far as everyone knew, she just kind of went crazy, needed a bit of a timeout in, in care, right?
Right.
And then she came back, and I think that in and of itself was a risky move, right? Because obviously she knows.
Yep.
She has. I mean, even before she left, even before she was taken away, and Jack sent her away, she knew that something was not quite right. Once she figured it out, she came back.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So you have to remember too that whole scene where she's getting like electroshock to the head kind of thing. It's real, but it's not, right? So these neural links are attached like around her eyes and connected to her temples. So you have to think that the Victory Corporation, through the server, are sending these electric pulses through the server link into her neural patterns, and basically trying to shock the memory of everything that was happening out of it. So they're basically trying to reboot her system remotely through these sensors. And this is, again, what the virtual world, the imagery that it's created to make it make sense in a very weird and, very shocking kind of way.
And then it makes me wonder if the neighbors or the people in this virtual world, if they actually know each other in the outside world, or if they're complete strangers.
No, they are, unless they were married, like, Alice and Jack, right? They're complete strangers to each other. They're just people on the same server.
I wonder though, and again, I draw back to the ballet
but remember,
connection.
That's not real though. None of it's real.
No, I know it's not real, but it makes me wonder if there's more significance in Alice's deep embedded memory. Because, I mean, why else would they keep drawing back to these flashbacks? Or, again, they were almost horrific. I don't know, yet beautifully. You just have to see the movie. Just watch the damn movie. And
these very Bugsby Berkeley type of ballet, water ballet type things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like it was meant to be beautiful, and then you see their faces and they're almost done up like as if they're in like a Marilyn Manson video.
Mm-hmm.
Like the beautiful and the macabre.
Yeah. I mean, one of the giveaways too is when Alice steals Margaret's file out of the doctor's briefcase, and she opens it up to read it, and everything is redacted. There's nothing there. It's all just black lines. There's a theory and a working study that basically states that in our dreams, we can't actually read anything. So even if you, in your dream, if you're trying to read a book in your dream, the words don't make sense. It's just a blur. You can't write anything in your dream, or at least you may be writing, but the words don't make sense. It's the concept of the written language apparently doesn't exist in the dream state, which is why everything is redacted in this.
Fascinating. But it does make me wonder if there's some significance to the doctor as well in Alice's reality, where she works in, because she works in a hospital. And is it not the same actor who was the doctor who is maybe a surgeon?
I don't know if it is or not. I have a feeling the doctor is actually an employee of Victory, much like I think Frank is. Like, I think Frank is basically the guy who created the program and kind of runs the program from inside the program. And I think basically his wife, as played by Gemma Chan, Shelley, was the first, for lack of a better term, victim of the program. The first, quote unquote, voluntold to be put in. So I have a feeling the doctor is actually on the Victory payroll, and he's in the virtual world, much like a safeguard for the program and for the people in the program.
I do wonder, when Alice tried to kill herself, what if she had succeeded? And furthermore, what happened?
She didn't try to kill herself. Margaret tried to kill herself. Oh no, there was the point too where
No,
Alice wrapped the cellophane around her head, kind of
She
thing.
also tried to drown herself. However, when she killed Jack in Victory,
So this
real?
This is one of those weird plot holes here, and I need to point this out. So apparently, women can't die in Victory, but the men can. So in Surrogates, if we're using that as a comparable as well, the reason why Bruce Willis's cop character was on the case of like this weapon is that if your surrogate is hit with this one weapon, it sends a neural link back to the actual user in their bed or in their connection bay, and it actually fries them out from there. Like normally, if you're linked to a surrogate, you can throw that surrogate off the the roof of the Empire State Building, have the surrogate crash, experience the fall, and then just disconnect from yourself. Nothing happens. But this weapon has the ability to send that reverse neural link back to the user and kill them, which is why Bruce Willis is investigating it. Here, the logic is that the men can't die, but the women can, but it's never explained beyond that. And that's a big loophole here. Like, why? Why can't the women die in this?
Yeah. So then the neighbor, did you call her Margaret?
Margaret.
No, Margaret. Was she actually dead, or did she just... Because we didn't see her after she fell off the roof.
If the women can't die, then the guys in the red suits coming in is basically her being disconnected from the server. So she's not dead. She's just offline.
Removed. Okay.
Exactly. At least that's the working theory, because we do never see from her again. So I wonder if her killing herself, quote unquote, in Victory was, in her mind, the way she was able to disconnect, or at least get offline. Maybe she was having enough flashbacks to realize what the real world actually was for her, and that Victory wasn't it. To the same token as well, when Alice goes out into the desert and finds the building that's on top of the mountain, and she touches the glass, this is like that Alice through the looking glass thing as a way to, like finding an exit portal in a video game to go on to the next level. So there's a lot that you have to sit there and infer from it. And you have to put a little bit of video game logic into it, I guess. It works really well if you watched Westworld or some of these other films.
And now it sounds like you're comparing Free Guy.
There is a little bit of that, yes. Obviously a lot more fun. But I mean, Guy is a virtual character, doesn't really exist. Everyone in Victory actually exists, just in a virtual state. So again, similar to Westworld, but very much not Keys. Well, even Keys, right? When he logs in, he's basically his avatar. So it's similar to that, where you can be booted out, you can do all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't really affect you as a person. Even though he's a guy, right? So there's, and Molotov Girl, right? She logs in, it's her avatar that she's controlling, but she's doing it willfully, as opposed to here in Victory. There's so many comparables, right? And when you start to draw those comparables, the movie does make a bit more sense. Mm-hmm. But let's move on and get into the rest of the cast here. I'm so glad we tackled this before we tackle the rest of the cast, because it's going to make a lot of their characters make a lot more sense. Before we do move on, though, I do have to say, so a lot of the talk during the press campaign of this film was about the sex, right? There's not a lot of it, though.
Okay, but the scenes were excessively difficult to watch.
Really?
I think so.
I'm now curious as to why you say that.
I was like, you know what? Really? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like allude to it and then move on, but don't stay there and, It overstayed its welcome for at least one scene that's, burned into my brain. I'm like, okay, really?
Okay, let's be blunt here.
Move on.
There are 2 sex scenes in this. Okay, there's one where Jack comes home and basically goes down on Alice, and then there's the second one where Jack and Alice have sex in Frank's house, and Frank walks in on it and just watches.
Which
one
is creepy AF.
It's creepy AF, but it does allude to a bit more of the unrealness of what's going on around them. But I'm curious which one it was that that kind of eked you out.
It was the dinner table scene. I'm like, you know what? Just okay, right? We're good. Move on.
I'm going to hypothesize something here. And again, I'm not Olivia Wilde. I'm not the one directing this. I didn't write the script. So I'm basically giving you my take on this whole thing, at least as far as my understanding of the film goes from what we've watched. So if Jack puts Alice into victory because he feels, for lack of a better term, emasculated, right? He feels like he's weak. He feels like he's unable to do the things that he's supposed to do for Alice. In his own mind, the roles are almost reversed, right? And we know that Alice is, by the time she comes home from a 30-hour shift, she's too tired for sex, right? So if Jack is not feeling, good enough to be able to please his wife, in this virtual world, her pleasure is his strength.
Okay. You know what? I agree with that. I mean, I have questions as well. Why, for the second scene, why was Jack getting dressed in Frank's bedroom to begin with?
That one I'm not going to lie. I have a feeling
they never addressed it.
And then again, I'm just hypothesizing here because I don't know if he was trying on one of Frank's ties. If he was trying to, because all the men seem to want to be like Frank, right? And they idolize him. They worship the power that he seemingly has, right? Shelley is a very doting and submissive wife, almost like the Leave It to Beaver era type kind of personality. Until, of course, the end of the film, which you can watch that, but it's a very 50s relationship that they portray, right? And he's supposedly like the CEO of Victory, the company that they all work for, kind of thing. So they all worship him as this pinnacle of manness, right? So if he's there trying on one of his ties, it's almost like he's trying to get into those shoes. So to have sex with Alice in that house, again, it's more of it's a power play. It's him trying to feel like the man. So it just goes to show how weak Jack is in that sense. And again, I could be wrong. I could just be blowing smoke up my ass, but this is at least my interpretation of the film as I saw it.
Well, I think as far as like the elitism or the status of with both Shelley, is it Shelley?
Shelley and Frank.
Shelley and Frank.
Which, if you think about it, Frank being short for Frankenstein, Mary Shelley is the creator of Frankenstein's monster.
Wow, that's interesting. You just literally like completely like, I don't know, went like a strange turn.
Yeah.
U-turn.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but even Shelley was very well revered. Of
she walks into the room to the man.
She walks into the room and all the women are like standing to attention.
Yeah.
And hanging on for every word. It's like,
And she's the one who's teaching the ballet class. So I have a feeling that Shelley is very much in line with Victory, but willingly but not willingly, maybe. We don't know, because we don't know that's the other thing too. We know what Alice is like in the real world. We don't, and we have an inkling of why Bunny is there, but everyone else is a mystery as to what they're really like in the real world.
Again, I think there's something symbolic with the ballet I don't know. It's interesting.
I would be curious to do a deep dive with the writers and to figure that out.
Is it based on a book?
No, it's a script that actually made the 2019 blacklist. Of course, the blacklist being the scripts that were never picked up in that year, but deemed the best of the ones that were never bought. So it was out there, and producers and directors knew that it was out there. It just hadn't been picked up that year. So, once a script is on the blacklist, it doesn't take long for it to get picked up, at least optioned out anyways. But let's move on, though. Harry Styles as Jack. So, in essence, the villain of this, how was he for you?
It's interesting that you call him a villain, because I don't know if I would villainize him. I mean, he's certainly... Okay, I mean, he's totally to blame that Alice and he are there.
Against her will, no less.
Right. But is he a villain, or is it Frank that's the villain?
Frank, I think, is just the conduit. That would be like asking if, let's go back to that first Michael Keaton Batman film, right? To claim that Frank is the villain as opposed to Jack would be like saying that the gun is the villain as opposed to the Joker.
See, but I don't look at him as a villain per se. He's definitely not. I think he's doing it with good intentions, but he's not a bad guy. He's not he's not like a serial killer or anything.
No,
he's just, he's just a husband that, again, maybe this is his last ditch attempt to save
feel
his
like
marriage.
something, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, like when you take a look at their apartment, it's not a good apartment in the real world. It's like run down. I don't know how much he's actually working because, he looks like me after 5 days of no sleep. It's, you have to think that he feels, for lack of a better term, less of a man, right? He's completely in the wrong for putting her into victory against her will.
You're right, but I don't know if I would call him a villain.
No, he's weak. He is doing things. He's doing the wrong things for what he thinks are the right reasons, but in essence, they're actually, he's selfish is what he is, right? He doesn't feel like he's in any control. He doesn't feel a part of her world, so he's going to make her part of his world, the world that he wants to create. That's utterly selfish. So, in essence, Jack is very much I think you're right. I think villain is not the right word, but definitely the antagonist in this.
Fair enough.
But that being said, I am so happy they cast Harry Styles and not Shia LaBeouf.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not the biggest Shia LaBeouf fan when it comes to his acting. And we saw what Shia LaBeouf would be like in that era, because we all remember Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and No Mas, thank you kindly. I just think that Shia LaBeouf in that 50s role wouldn't fit the mold of the movie itself.
No, and let's be honest, he needed to have that handsome, Harry Styles nailed it.
Oh yeah, he brought the dapper, yeah.
I had no freaking idea when I saw Jack in the really real world. I had no idea that was him.
Yeah, he went from looking like Dapper Dan in the 50s to like Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne in The Batman.
Yeah, it was.
There's another guy that would have done really well in that role, Robert Pattinson.
I could see that.
And that's nothing against Harry Styles. I think he was actually the perfect choice for that role. He and Florence Pugh played off each other really, really well throughout the entire film, whether it be in the real world or in Victory.
Do you know what it was that got me, though, about Harry Styles? I had no freaking idea, because he didn't really have any lines until until Florence Pugh Alice starts to really lose it. And then he kind of like pleads that, he needs this job and he needs her to, kind of just fall in line, right? Like it's almost kind of like, and you know what it was? It was his voice, because he really hadn't said much in the entire movie until that point. And I was like, oh, I really like his voice. And I think it was at that point I'm like, that's Harry Styles. It, like, honest to God, it didn't clue in until that moment when he started to speak, until he finally had a line. And this is now like an hour and a half into the movie.
I just find it funny that you've got Florence Pugh, who of course is Yelena Belova in the Marvel movies now. You got Harry Styles, who's Adam Warlock in the Marvel movies. You got Gemma Chan, who is in Captain Marvel. You got Chris Pine, who was in the Wonder Woman movies, also Captain frickin' James T. Kirk. And then you've got Olivia Wilde, who was Korra in Tron Legacy. You got a whole lot of sci-fi geekery going on in this film. So, kudos to that. But let's talk about Olivia Wilde, who, of course, played Bunny as well as directed the film. How was she for you?
You know what? She was great, but I think I was kind of maybe expecting... I absolutely loved at the end where she had Alice's back, 150%. But I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from her. Maybe like she has had episodes along the way that something didn't quite add up, or, just something where you knew, like watching it, that she would kind of have that turnaround in the end as well.
And that's the thing. Like, once you realize her motivation for being there, everything up to that point makes a lot more sense. Like when Alice confides that she went out to the desert and she went up to headquarters and all this stuff, and and Bunny freaks out and walks out on her. Bunny knows what's going on. She knows the score. She put herself there, which is why she's quite happy to live in Victory and live that life. So anything that threatens the stability of Victory and the stability of this safety net that's holding Bunny upright, of course she's going to lash out at. It makes total sense, the motivation.
And that's kind of where it also became very WandaVision, because, Wanda was very much motivated by her children. So, yeah.
Well, even too, when when Pietro comes in and, all of a sudden, like, oh my crap, my brother's here, right? And he starts questioning her on things. Like, there's a lot in WandaVision that, you can almost direct, parallel this movie to that and points in that and do a very, very good case study. Like, WandaVision wasn't even on my radar as far as comparables go, so you nailed that one. Let's talk about Chris Pine as Frank in this. Your thoughts?
Creepy. He was just creepy. Every scene that he was in, I was like, man, like, there's something. There, like, as far as like to play a commanding creator, or he was very much almost like a god to these people. Like, literally, you have like the women fawning over him. You've got the men that, again, are like, yes, man, like completely in awe. And he was just so freaking creepy.
I think, too, one of the things you have to remember is that, Olivia Wilde had mentioned that in casting the character for Frank, one of the templates that she envisioned Frank as being was based on Jordan Peterson, who is a very controversial figure. And I'm not going to go too much into why he's controversial, because I don't really want to go down that road. For the record, Jordan Peterson's response upon hearing this was something about quote unquote woke liberal Hollywood, yada, yada, yada. So that just gives you every single mindset of why I don't want to go down that road, because whatever, we're not here to be a political podcast. We're here to talk about movies that were poorly rated by critics. But I think Chris Pine, when I think about the movies that he's in, right? Captain James D. Kirk, he's Steve Trevor in the Wonder Woman movies. I'm so looking forward to watching Dungeons and Dragons when I finally get a chance to, because he looks like he's just having so much fun in that film. But you're right. He is creepy as hell in this movie. But it's a domineering kind of creepy. It's almost like an overlord kind of creepy, like a puppet master kind of creepy.
Very much a puppet master. And that's where I was going with the dance scene where he promoted Jack. Mm-hmm. And then Jack did this dance number. And I'm like, okay, wow. He is very much the puppet master.
But that's the thing.
Dance, monkey, dance.
He's their god, for lack of a better term, right? He's their deity. He's this alpha male, and all these other men who in their lives feel enfeebled to begin with look up to this, for lack of a better term, paragon of manhood, and they'll dance and they'll jump around and they'll act the fool if he asks for it. So while you have a film that is, in one hand about control of women and their independence, you also have the alpha male control over those who feel less than them. There are enough people out there in the world who try to prop themselves up as being, better than everyone else. And I am the paragon and I am the alpha. And you have all these people who feel bad about themselves following their lead and doing whatever that they say so they can feel closer to this ideal version. It's almost like a cult that point.
I was going to say, isn't that what like Charles Manson did in a sense, that he had like he had a cult. He had like a house.
They had the Manson family. Yeah. Like, in
followers,
in situations like that, women wanted to be with him and men wanted to be him. In this case, men want to be Frank, and women be damned in that case, right? They want to achieve that level, right? It's the Instagram lifestyle that they want to be. Yeah. It preys on the weak male.
It is creepy, though.
It is very, very creepy. And I think Chris Pine, to his credit, played it perfectly, right? Dashing, handsome, right? Well poised, but always with this edge to him.
Oh, yeah, like he could snap at any minute.
Mm-hmm.
One scene that really threw me, though, was the bedroom scene. In Frank's bedroom. First of all, I didn't know that was Jack. He looked different. And I wonder if they did that on purpose to kind of make you think that Alice was unfaithful. And then Jack is watching.
Frank is watching.
Sorry. No. Yeah. I forgot the names. Frank is watching Jack and Alice.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Frank is watching this like, yep, you are proof that my plan works.
So, but then at the dinner scene where Frank was alluding that Alice was unfaithful, yet it was Jack.
Yeah, so in this essence, Frank is on to Alice and how Alice is questioning the reality of victory, right? Which is why he's almost goading her into going too far. He's basically like, I want to see how, I want to see what you do next, right? He's poking the bear, right? He's poking the bear to try to get an overreaction from Alice. And then when Alice does get a little frantic about it and start to throw out these, for lack of a better term, conspiracy theories that she has about what's going on, no matter how close she might be, he's then sitting there going, well, she's just a hype, she's just being shrill. She's just being unstable, if you will, right? He is downplaying her suspicions, even though he knows that she's on to that there's something wrong. She may not know exactly what it is, but he got her to overreact so then he could say, well, she's just being manic. She's just being a woman,
He
right?
was totally gaslighting her, I realized.
Absolutely, yes.
But again, was he not alluding that she was unfaithful, yet it was indeed Jack?
But at that point, right, Jack knows that the world isn't real. So anything that happens in that world, it's not like she was actually unfaithful to him. She's still lying in a bed beside him with these neural things connected to her head. Right? So...
Okay, but with that said, it was Jack's character in the bedroom or
yes,
somebody
it was.
else?
It was Jack in the bedroom. Yes, because remember, she came in, he was trying on the tie, because why else? She would have fought back if it was somebody else.
But he looked different.
He did. And I think that's because at that, and again, I'm just hypothesizing the rationale behind it. In that moment, Jack is showing his weakness, his beta male to Frank's alpha, right? So it's almost like the vision of him is back to what the real world actually is until he dominates again and tries to become the alpha, and then afterwards becomes again.
It was very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
That part completely lost me, especially.
This film is so many watches away from actually understanding it, I think. But let's talk about Gemma Chan, who played Shelley, Frank's wife. Like, how was she for you?
She was great.
Mm-hmm.
She was absolutely commanding, and she was. I mean, even from the ballet scene in the beginning, to be honest, I didn't even know she was Frank's wife until the dinner. And I was like, holy crap, they're married. Okay, great. Now it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. I think the scene that really sold it for her, was at the end, where she, Jack's on the phone with Frank and explained that Alice is, trying to get away, and, he's starting to freak out a little bit. And she literally just comes up and stabs him. Mm-hmm. Cold, emotionless. It's business, right? Like,
well, especially since the women can't die and the men do.
Which, plot
she's
hole.
like, this is going to end. She's like, this is going to end this now.
Yeah. It's almost like she couldn't even believe she did what she did at that moment. It's like she probably thought about it a number of times, and when the moment actually happens, she's almost surprised by her own, not shocked, not like, oh my God, I absolutely, no, like it's the, all right, okay, what next?
Now what?
Pretty much, yeah.
Ooh, how are we going to get out of here?
I think it's the perfect underreaction to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kiki Layne, who played Margaret, the woman who really starts to figure out before Alice starts to.
And again, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of her, but I think what they showed was perfect. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah.
I mean, nothing.
Such a sad story, though.
It's nothing against Dakota Johnson, who apparently was originally picked for this role, because I do think Dakota Johnson is a very, very good actress. But I think Kiki Layne slayed in this role. Like, I think the 1,000-yard stare that she's got when she's, like pushing away the pills, and, just when she's standing on the roof and staring at Alice, like this is the way out. This is,
those had to be like contacts. Like, she had crazy eyes.
I don't know if it was contacts now, but she hit that 1,000-yard stare like perfectly. Like the shock and the realization, and almost as if, when you realize that they're asleep, basically, she has that walking in a daydream kind of feel about her. Like it's perfect for the role. Like the movie benefited from Kiki Layne being in this.
I loved her lines too. She's like, I'm not fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Much like all of us watching this film, we're not fine. Timothy Simmons, who played Dr. Collins.
Yeah. Especially the scene where he does the house call for Alice, I mean, he was so good, but it was like there is something just not right about him. And he leaves his briefcase, like he didn't return for it. Like, really?
It's
plot hole that definitely.
Well, I mean, he had to leave, the script wise, he had to leave it so she could find the file and realize that she couldn't read it. But I have a feeling too, it's one of those things where, he's, I think, almost dismissive of, the foibles of everyone else that's around. Like, keep in mind, if he is actually a Victory employee, if he is Frank's, for lack of a better term, right-hand man, he probably has the same opinion of the people in Victory as Frank probably does. So he is like, and again, I am just hypothesizing here. He probably feels that everyone is beneath him because he's number 2 to Frank.
I can see that.
Yeah. I will say too, once you realize kind of what's going on, it makes sense as to why people kind of show up and don't show up and randomly. Like Violet, as played by Sydney Chandler, the new girl, right, with the pixie cut. Mm-hmm. If these are new people added to the server of Victory, it makes sense why they're introduced that way. Like, these are new people to the town, the new company thing. Like, there's a lot of questions where you can sit there and say, okay, well, there's all these rumblings and earthquake type things that are happening in Victory, and one might consider that, well, they're near California. But when you also consider that the apartment that they're at is probably in like a very cheap rental area, which means they're probably near a train or something like that. So it's possible that the rumbling is actually the outside world probably shaking the apartment at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because they kind of seem to live in the middle of the desert. Like, they were all in this alcove with this rounded street, and all the men left in their Cadillacs and drove out to the desert.
Right, but to the same token as well, if they're the ones that put their wives in and they're the ones that go off to work, quote unquote, then they have the ability to jump in and out of the server, whereas the women are kind of stuck there.
What was the significance of the plane crash? And do you think that maybe the plane had something to do with the rumbling?
I don't think the plane had anything to do with the rumbling, but I think the plane was a way to point towards where the exit is. And again, this is literally just me hypothesizing and from things that I've read on, Wikipedia and other websites kind of thing. So there's a lot of symbolism in this that you have to sit there and try to almost shoehorn in an explanation. Like the whole scene where Alice is wiping the window with the newspaper, and then the wall starts closing in and she's stuck in between the window and the I don't know why that scene's there, if for anything other than a cool visual. But
I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, it was very, very cool.
It was almost like that her world is suffocating her, or her perfect life or perfect house.
Yeah.
Was suffocating her. And the fact that she was constantly cleaning this one spot, maybe it had happened before, where her face was pressed against the window.
I would be curious to go back, watch that scene, and try to freeze frame it so you could read what was in the newspaper at the time. I'm curious if there was anything there. I in all honesty, I didn't actually pay attention close enough. All I knew was that it was newspaper that she was cleaning the windows with, so that made it a bit more surreal. I think that's one of the criticisms you could put on this film, in that there's a lot of really cool, imagery and cinematography that went into this, that you have to go back and watch it a few times to try to find a reason for those shots to be there.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly why I wanted to give it a third watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth a couple watches. It's kind of like, and I know I've made this comparison on this show a couple times already, but I'm going to do it again, so suck it up. Event Horizon. I remember watching that movie thinking it was going to be this really, really cool sci-fi film, And I watch it and like 3/4 of the way through, I'm like, yeah, this is a really cool sci-fi film. And then it turns into some weird satanic horror film with entrails being spilled all over the place. And when you realize that it's a horror film that just happens to be set in space, it gives you the better mindset to watch the whole film, and a lot of it makes more sense. Once you realize what Victory actually is, the town, a lot of it makes a lot more sense. It's a two-watcher. It's like that album that grows on you.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
Before we get to our MVPs, Twitter did speak out on this one. The We Needed Roads podcast chimed in with, "It started really well and the pew was awesome. Styles was okay, but the setup was better than the payoff, sadly." So I'm gonna throw this at you. And by the way, thank you to the We Needed Roads podcast. You can find them on Twitter at Needed Roads. I'm gonna ask you, was the payoff worth the setup?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, it's definitely, again, watch it the first time and you'll be like, what the is this? And then you get to the end and then you want to watch it again to see what you've missed along the way. And then watch it a third time just to kind of get, again, those little nuances. Like almost like the hidden gems in this movie.
Yeah. Now, we did talk about a lot of serious topics in this episode. Just recognize that we are talking about a 2-hour work of fiction, right? We are talking about the actors. We are talking about their performances. In all honesty, like, I know there's a lot of drama that went on with the making of this film. I could give two what goes on in the personal lives of the actors. When it comes to us looking at these films, I know me personally, I'm just looking at the film and the performance in the film, and the drama or behind the scenes doesn't affect the film at all for me. Knowing now everything that went on, does it affect the way you watch this film?
Not at all. No, because again, it's a movie.
Yeah.
Fictional characters. However, I would be fascinated to see if there's even a book adapted from screen, just because I think that there are so many things that, this would make an amazing novelization.
Oh, absolutely.
And I really think it would be the case where the book is better than the movie. And not that the movie's not great. I really enjoyed the movie on the second watch.
Right.
The first one, I was like, this is too much. I'm going to put my brain to bed and close my eyes and go to sleep now. I admit, I can usually hold my own and stay awake during the movies that I'm researching. Not generally. I generally have movie narcolepsy, but in this case,
I was about to say,
in this case, I fell asleep. I got to admit, I woke up the next day and I'm like, so how was it?
And my response to that, of course, was like, it was good. It was good. And then the twist happened and it got really interesting. And that's when you had to sit there and go, okay, I'll watch it a second time. And I would get these text messages like, what the is going on? I'm not high enough for this movie.
Yeah, true text.
Right. Oh God. Like I almost feel like we need like a Twitter thread of texts that Carrie sends me on the rewatch of the movies that we're about to record on here.
Oh, that'd be fun to add. Yeah, screen caps of my texts.
Okay, you can no longer hide from this question. So, Carrie,
bring it on,
my darling.
I'm ready.
Don't worry.
Oh crap.
Who is
this
your
isn't gonna end well.
Who is your MVP of Don't Worry, Darling?
Florence Pugh.
The Pugh.
Hands down. Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly. And the thing is, this film lives and dies by how good Alice is.
She's so great.
Yeah. Florence Pugh, like, absolutely phenomenal performance in this.
Why do you suppose she didn't want to do press for it? Is there a reason?
Well, in some of those messages and text messages kind of thing where Olivia Wilde was trying to get Shia LaBeouf back onto the movie kind of thing, apparently there was like conflict behind the scenes because, you know, Florence Pugh felt disrespected by Olivia Wilde from some of the things that are said. And like, if you go through like something about like Florence Pugh needing to suck it up or something like that, and like it's unfortunate because it feels kind of catty when you hear about, you know, some of the text messages and the videos that came out, and I feel bad because if some of the press or a lot of the press during the initial junkets were all talking about the amount of sex in this film. Again, we're talking 2 sex scenes in this, and I think it's completely overblown. I appreciate that Florence Pugh is very much an actor of the moment, right? She's in high demand, right? She slayed it as Yelena Belova. She was wonderful in Hawkeye playing against Haley Steinfeld. Midsommar was good, but you know, I'm from what I've seen, I haven't watched the whole thing, but from what I've seen, she's good, but the movie's kind of thing. She killed it in Fighting With My Family, playing the real life story of Paige from WWE. She's done a lot of really, really good films. I think she was in Glass Onion, if memory serves. She's in high demand. Harry Styles is one of the biggest, you know, singers out there right now touring, and you have these actors of the moment, right? Like the hottest thing right now on the marquee, and they're in a movie where there's a sex scene, and there's no nudity, right? This isn't like Alyssa Milano deciding to do Embrace of the Vampire. This is, you know, it's 2 sex scenes. And they're really, from a rating perspective, they're very tame.
You know what I think it was, though, is the more sexualization of women, period, in this movie. I think it stems from the first scene where all the women are dancing, trying to balance the platter with the drink, and you know, and then the guys are like, take off your shirts, you know, and it's just like, and the whole concept of the women waiting at home with, you know, a canter of whiskey or whatever drink and a pretty dress and a, you know, like the minute the man gets home,
it's this outdated,
yeah,
misogynistic view of what the perfect woman should be. And I can see people pushing back against that. But the thing is, you have to recognize that that's the driving factor behind the idea of victory. And once you realize that the people who have those opinions and the reason why they're putting their wives into victory, once you realize that they're the ones in the wrong, it goes to show that misogynistic view is wrong. The people, the villains doing the thing make the thing wrong because it's done by the villains.
Stop calling Jack a villain. He's not a villain. He's just...
Tell that to the MTV Movie Awards.
He's a sad, lonely man.
Oh, I'm
not an MVP.
I'm saying he's not he's a pathetic villain. Really, he's a victim of his own lack of self-worth, and thereby causing him to do villain-esque things. And I say villain in the antagonist sense of the story, not as opposed to, you know, he's not going out robbing banks. He's just, you know, making his wife comatose and putting her in a world she doesn't want to be in.
Yeah, when you put it that way.
Kind of villain. But Carrie, darling, Thank you for joining me on this episode. Now, to you, our darling listeners, yeah, I'm going down that road. You guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there's no way in victory that we can find anything good to say about it, yeah, you see what I did there. Hit us up on Twitter at NotThatBadCast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, check out our coming soon page so you can see some of the movies that we are preparing to talk about. Please, surrogates, please. Until next time, Carrie, lovely as always. Listeners, yeah, you're pretty lovely too. You're awesome. I'm Jay. This is It's Not That Bad. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.